Hello, and welcome to the Imposter Syndrome Network podcast, where everyone belongs. We're all imposters here. My name is Chris Grundeman, and I'm here with my co-host and fellow imposter, Zoe Rose.
Hey.
This is the Micheline Murphy episode, and it's going to be a great show. So hi, Micheline. Do you want to introduce yourself a bit to the Imposter Syndrome Network?
Hello, imposters. I am Micheline Murphy, and I feel like I should say I'm an imposter too.
One of us.
This is like a meeting. I'm a consulting systems engineer at Worldwide Technology. I've been in the role for just shy of a year. And previous to that, I was a data center engineer working on the opposite side of the fence, so implementation. So there's no imposters there. So as you can see, I jumped ship from that. Previous to that, I was a trial lawyer for just about 15, 16 years, almost 2 decades. There's a whole bunch of imposters in there. You know, that was an area that after a couple decades had kind of gotten stale for me. And so I was looking for something new and exciting. And IT ended up being the thing that grabbed my attention.
Definitely. I mean, obviously, while we chat about careers and journeys in technology on the show, and we'll obviously get into that, I do want to start by kind of addressing that previous life as a lawyer. I've never personally met a retired lawyer who's working in technology before. I'm sure there's got to be at least another one out there. Yeah.
There's like 2 of us, I think. There's a couple of us. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, as you started to there, maybe you can tell us a little bit about that career shift. Why retire from being a lawyer maybe is one question, but then I think the more interesting one to this audience is then, you know, where did that inspiration to then start a career in technology come from, or how did that all go down? Yeah.
So I was at a point in my career where it was getting to be really obvious that my time was limited. You know, there was nothing else that I knew I could learn, basically. The law doesn't change very fast, and it was getting very stale. And one day I was having a conversation with my husband. He goes, well, you should look at this as an opportunity to do something different. And I asked him what he thought I should do, because I had no idea. And I had really not even looked at the situation as an opportunity. And he said to me, you should do what I do. I think you'd be really good at it. And I honestly had to look at him, and we've been, at that point in time, I think we'd been married almost 20 years. And he said, and I said, well, what do you do? And I
love it.
You know, it was yeah, exactly. It was the sort of thing like, you know, we've been married for so long. He's been in the industry for, you know, his entire career. He's very good at it. And I had no idea what he did. He does something computers, you know.
I mean, that sounds like a pretty good relationship, though. If you guys had so much to talk about, and he was, you know, and he's not bringing home work and being like, "Oh man, this is terrible." You know, there's no like whining about his job or anything obviously going on. Otherwise, you would have known a little bit more about it. This sounds really healthy, actually.
Yeah, and I mean, now we're in the same industry together, and you know, we're just like 2 geeks in the same pod. So, like, you know, we make stupid tech jokes at each other now. I don't know if that's better or worse. But, you know, it is a thing. So, you know, it ended up being that for a little while, he was able to kind of guide me in what I was learning and what I was looking at. But, you know, at this point in time, I've gone off in one direction. He's gone off in a different direction. I actually went deep into an area that he left. So now my expertise in that area is stronger than his own expertise. So it ends up being, you know, interesting. So now it becomes more, instead of kind of like a student-teacher kind of relationship in that, and then him forgetting that I actually haven't been around in the industry all that long, and then getting upset with me because I don't understand MPLS. It ends up being more of an equal. So it's easier for either of us to say to each other, well, I don't know much about that technology. And that's, I found, is something that you have to kind of embrace. And that embrace is a little bit scary sometimes, right? because you don't want to be that person that's the first to admit in the room that I don't know what the hell that is. Somebody bring me up to speed on that, because that takes a little bit of bravery.
It does. And I found that, well, two things, right? I mean, one, it definitely takes some bravery because it always feels like you're the only one who doesn't know what's going on. But I don't know about your experience, but for me, I find that it's almost a domino effect almost every time. Like the times when I finally say, I don't actually understand what you're saying to us. Usually there's, depending on the number of people in the room, there's usually some number, 2 or 3 or 4 other folks who are like, yeah, we don't get it. We have no idea what's going on. And I've been on the other side of that too, where I'm sitting there like, what is happening? And then somebody else is like, hey, I don't know what you're doing. And then I'm like, oh my God, thank God. It's not just me.
Yeah, it is. And I am fortunate to work in a culture right now that it really encourages team members to ask the question why. So I'm mentoring a young man right now. His boss told him and told me to keep him asking the question why, which is a great corporate culture to work in, because if you're ingraining in people to ask the question why and it's expected to ask questions, it helps to buffer people feeling stupid that, I got to ask this question, right? So I think it's an interesting way that the company that I'm at kind of embraces that imposter syndrome and tries to make the workplace a little bit more humane. It's not a matter of you will at some point in time know everything about everything, because that's just an impossible task, right? No one is ever going to know everything about everything. But if you put enough people together who are encouraged to be curious and encouraged to communicate, encouraged to work together, maybe you can build a team that has the answers.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I mean, for me, I would agree with that. There's been many situations where I'm like, I don't know what people are talking about, and I feel like absolutely rubbish. And then, as you said, Chris, sometimes somebody says, "Oh, I don't understand," and I'm like, "Oh, thank goodness." But I will say, as I've gotten more senior, I've felt more comfortable admitting when I don't know. And it's almost like in the beginning, I had to credential so much, I couldn't admit I didn't know, because then I wasn't taken seriously. But I think partially it's where I'm working, and partially it's like the culture, but partially it's now that I'm more senior in the industry, it's been a bit easier because I don't have to do that credentialing. And if somebody doesn't take me seriously, I know that's on them. Versus in the beginning, I was absolutely terrified. I think one thing that I would find interesting is, obviously you started as a lawyer, and then you left that and you joined the technology career. My first question is, what was your first role in first IT job? And how did you approach going from probably being a respected lawyer to essentially starting over?
Yeah, it wasn't exactly a start over. The first role that somebody offered to pay me money for was to write technical articles. And I had been actually really active on the Cisco Learning Network. So like as I started out, I was that, hey, I'm just going to stick my hand up because I don't understand this. And I started out, could someone please explain the difference between a switch and a router to me? Those sorts of really basic questions. And then my questions got to be like, could someone please explain, the difference between type 5 and type 7 LSAs and OSPF, and then eventually I got to the point where I understood the material enough that when the next person asked what was the difference between type 5 and type 7 LSAs and OSPF, that was an answer I could give. And eventually I got to the point where I'm kind of looking at technology that interests me, and I kind of gravitated toward ACI. And so I ended up writing a series of articles for the Cisco Learning Network, completely gratis, just because I have kind of nothing better to do, right? I'm going to write these articles. And 12 articles later, somebody noticed and said, hey, can you write me an article? And I'm like, someone's going to pay me to write an article? Sure. Yeah, I love it. And so my very first role was this really piecemeal kind of, okay, could you produce some content we're going to roll out a new website, and, and in technology, somebody rolls out a new website like every other day. So, they need content. So that was my kind of first role. And of course, what ended up happening is, now you Google my name and all of these technical articles come up. Most of them are about ACI. And eventually somebody said, well, I need an ACI engineer. And by the time I was interviewing for what ended up being my first full-time role, the hiring manager's like, well, I've read your material on the internet already, and so we don't need to talk about your technical expertise. So let's talk about how you're going to fit into my team. And I'm like, cool. So, it was a huge shot in the arm because, going into the interview for your very first technical role, I mean, I went in like hugely nervous that I wasn't going to have the technical chops because I didn't have anything on my resume. So, I had literally like a little, not even little. I mean, I think it was like several pages of cues that if he talks about this, be sure to mention this project. If he talks about this, be sure to mention you did this. If he talks about this, be sure to mention
the lawyer coming out.
Well, not just that, but I was like convinced that I was like the underdog in terms of technical expertise because, nobody had ever paid me to do it before. And it ended up being that I had done all of this preparation, and he starts out the interview by just saying, let's just talk about you for a little bit. I've read your articles. We don't need to talk about the technical expertise. I don't expect you'll need to go through the technical interviews. I'm like, wait, you want to talk about me? Wait, I haven't prepared for that.
That's the one thing I don't have, notes on.
Yeah, exactly. Whole new other, like, hold on just a second. Let me just find a piece of paper. So that was kind of like my beginning. And then they hired me, and then the pandemic happened. So it ended up being that, all of this conversation about, how do you fit into the team structure? Well, the team was national anyway as an overlay. So like we were all, basically a bunch of geeks sitting behind Microsoft Teams and, IMing at each other. So
is that the job that you have now? That one that you moved into? No. Okay. There's been another one since then. All right.
The role I'm in right now is my second role in full-time role in IT. So,
okay.
But, I joined a group of really, 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 really talented engineers. I felt like the littlest fish in the pond. And, I feel like I can hold my own, right? But it gives you like in terms of ACI, like perspective now gives me the viewpoint of like the rest of the world in terms of like what my expertise is. But when I started in that team and I was working with these really talented people who had this really deep well of knowledge, you feel really small and you feel really, uncomfortable. Like these guys are so smart and they know so much and they have so much expertise. How could I possibly? It's like looking through warped glass. You don't get the right sense of what your level of expertise is because you're looking at such a skewed margin.
Yeah.
I do have a question on that. Was that your motivation? Because I see that you have quite a few certifications. Mm-hmm. Was that slightly your motivation there?
To get a job?
or to get a job. Oh, okay.
Yeah. No. I got all those certifications to get the job.
Ah. Okay.
And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to just get the certs. I figured that I probably needed like an NP or higher, and I might need more than one NP or higher in order to be able to get a job.
And you have what, 4 now?
Right now I have 4.
So a bit quite impressive, I would say. I have none.
But you know what? It is a field where it may not make a difference, right? I've met people in the industry who are like enormously expert in their area, like huge subject matter experts, and they don't have a single certification or they don't have anything active, And then I've met people who have had a ton of certs and they're really good at taking tests. What I always tell people is that those certs are great. I don't discourage people from going after certs. I tell them, I always viewed it as that's how you open the door. That's how you get to start the conversation. That gives you a seat at the table. And once you sit down at the table, the rest is up to you. So I always viewed my certs as just that, kind of an invitation to come and talk.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think I've done the same thing where, for me, it was the learning to get to the cert is what was really valuable. I mean, obviously having the cert was great, especially early on. It felt really nice to have that validated. But I have since let almost everything expire because it's the knowledge that really matters, not the cert, for me anyway.
Right.
So I want to roll back a little bit or maybe jump forward. I don't know. You mentioned that, sitting in this team full of experts, your first role in technology really full time. And it was a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit like looking through warped glass. So I want to talk about another subject that is a little uncomfortable and maybe like looking through warped glass, which is COVID and specifically long COVID. And I understand that you may have something to tell us about, how to feel confident when you're not at your best.
Oh, yeah. So a little story. I started my new role, the role that I'm in right now. I started it at the end of last year. And I told the hiring manager, I'm like, look, I have some vacation I'm going to take in December. I love to go skiing. So every year I take a couple weeks in December, I go skiing. And I'm like, it's coming up. I am happy to start in January after my vacation is done, or I can start at the beginning of December. It's totally up to you. What do you want? And I told him, but I'm going to take this vacation. So he's like, let's get you started sooner rather than later. And I'm like, okay. So I get started. We're still, it was the end of December last year, so we're still all remote. So I did 2 weeks of onboarding and then I go on vacation and I get COVID on vacation. So, which was miserable. Yeah, everybody got COVID for Christmas in 2021. It was awful. I came back and I had to tell my boss, I'm like, I'm really sick. I need to take some time off to, get unsick. And he's like, no problem. Super great boss. And then shortly thereafter, I got long COVID. And I'm to this day, and it's been 9 months now or almost a year now, still struggling with the symptoms of long COVID.
Oh, wow. I mean, maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you're dealing with that. I mean, because, obviously, as someone who was a trial lawyer, who is working in technology, all of us, really kind of work with our minds and probably draw a lot of confidence from that and having it work the way you expect it to. So it's got to be a little bit scary.
It is a lot scary because, in terms of the science, there's nothing set right now as to, what is causing it, what's going to happen to you. For some time, the medical community wasn't even sure if it was actually a thing. So I'm reasonably certain, those doubting Thomases have been convinced. But, the fact that long COVID plays out in so many different symptomologies makes it particularly challenging to address. So for me, I am very lucky that I don't have a ton of brain fog. I seldom have it. I've had it a few times. It's really scary. The times I've had it, I'd be walking down the street with my dog and I'd look around. I'm like, I don't know where we are. Yeah. So I feel very fortunate that I don't have to deal with that. I get chronic fatigue. So I've had to really be structured about my days and making sure I schedule in the middle of my day a rest period, which makes going back to work a little difficult. We keep jokingly asking our boss to, structure a nap room in our facility. And I'm like, I'm not joking. But, when you don't feel good and you don't have I don't want to say it's mental fortitude, but I think it's the skills to be able to divorce what you're feeling physically from what you're feeling mentally. It can be a real challenge to just get on with your regular day. And just to maintain a positive attitude when you look back on, the life that you used to have before you were sick and what you're capable of doing now. I mean, it's really easy to slip into and say, oh, this is, not who I was. And, oh, I feel terrible because it's, not what I'm used to being able to do. And it's hard to project confidence or competence when all you want to do is just crawl in a hole and take a nap. And so it's a struggle. And I like to say, for myself, it was the ability to develop skills that helped me to kind of like divorce, okay, I feel crappy today, or I feel really low energy today. I just need to make sure I husband my strength appropriately according to what I've got on my calendar, and not get into, oh, I feel crappy today. Today's going to be really awful, and, nothing is going to go right. And, kind of tease those two thought processes apart from each other. It's a challenge. And, I have good days and I have bad days.
But I think the important part is the measuring over time. I talked to a dietitian for children, and they talked about how because I'm always worried that my daughter's not eating enough or not, normal mum stuff. But they said, don't measure it by the day, measure it by the week. And I remember when they said that to me, I was like, that's kind of how I work. Don't measure not my eating, but my capability of the day, measure my capability over the week. And after I started thinking about that, obviously not to the same degree as what you're going through, but I started my role 8 months pregnant, and it was exhausting. It was so exhausting. And I know people talk about the mum brain and the pregnancy brain, but I never realized how much I felt like I was walking through a cloud until a couple months ago, where I feel like it started to ease up, and my daughter's almost 2 now. So it's like being able to work when you're not at your best, not just is impacting your capability, yes, but it also impacts your ability to measure success and the ability to see that you're doing a good job. And I know, luckily, when it comes to being pregnant, most places where I work, there is protections in place, but I can't imagine how stressful it would be when things like long COVID, as you said, it's not fully understood, and therefore is the protections in place to help people that are struggling with that maybe aren't at their best. So it's a concerning topic, I think, for a lot of people.
I think it's really interesting to contrast. So, Elon Musk was on the news yet again about his Twitter, I don't even know what to call it, right? Boondoggle. I'm going to call it a boondoggle. His Twitter boondoggle. And, the latest in the Twitter boondoggle is that he's made this announcement that, they're gonna be focusing on the engineering, and he's going to be expecting, hardcore performance, and exceptional performance is going to be the passing grade now. Let's be like straight up honest. That kind of toxicity is the thing. And I don't want to say it's prevalent or it's the norm or anything like that in the tech industry, because, there are quite a few tech companies that have really embraced, sustainable and more balanced, work environments. But that kind of really toxic, you need to give your last ounce to the tech company, it's still a thing. And that's really the opposite end of the spectrum of, what I am searching for. I'm kind of weird because I'm a young engineer, right? Most of my peers are maybe a good 15, 20 years younger than I am. But this is my third career. And so I don't have the time or the energy or the patience to put up with that kind of silliness anymore. And, I've been known to like call out people for like, oh my God, she just said that, like right in a meeting. And I'm like, I don't have the time to deal with this silliness anymore. I'm not going to put up with it anymore. If you just don't like me calling it out, then maybe we have a bigger problem to talk about than what I just called you out for. But yeah, how do you bring all of those different threads to play? So like, as a young person, if I was working at Twitter, if I was just starting out in my career and I was at Twitter and then this announcement from the new owner came down that we all had to be exceptional or we were going to lose our jobs, would I have been scared enough as a younger person to say, okay, I am going to make that sacrifice and I'm going to give him my last ounce, even though that's outrageous for him to ask for it? Older me says, go F yourself. I would have walked. I would have give me my 3 months and I won't let the door hit my ass on the way out. Younger me might have stayed. And younger me as a lawyer stayed in some pretty toxic work environments because, I don't know, it was younger me and I didn't know better, or I didn't think there was better. I don't know why I stayed. Is it the time right to be able to say to folks that they should, even if they're starting out in their careers, look for a sustainable work environment? I think that people are entitled to have that. And I would like the world to be that they could demand that and not suffer negative consequences for demanding what I think ought to be provided to them. But older me is like, don't be foolish. That's not the case in most places or even So that's really a calculus that people have to sit down for themselves and decide. And that's a really hard one.
It is. It is for sure. I think that conversation around that definitely seems to be changing. So I think that's, probably good news. I think as much as some of the, gig work gets a bad rap for being exploitative, I think it actually provides a counterbalance to the exploitative full-time jobs or part-time jobs that are out there. So hopefully we're on a better track. Unfortunately, we are running out of time for today. So I feel like that's a little abrupt, but we're going to jump into the end here. Micheline, thank you for being here and for sharing your story with the Imposter Syndrome Network. I think this was really valuable, and I think people are going to get a lot out of this conversation. As always, thank you to all the imposters out there listening. We appreciate you. Thanks for spending your time and attention with us. We know it is valuable. Please feel free to subscribe so you can catch us every Tuesday. And don't forget that we have a LinkedIn group where you can give and get career advice as well. But Micheline, one last thing before we go. I wonder, being someone who's changed careers a couple of times and has successfully done it again here into technology, is there any pieces of advice or wisdom you can share with others who might be out there wanting to get into technology or maybe wanting to get out of technology, but they want that career change? Those can be really scary things to face down. So I wonder if there's any wisdom you can share with us on approaching and dealing with like a career change.
Do it. Commit. If that's where your passion is and that's the way you decide you want to go, commit to it and just go do it and follow your passion. That's what I got to say. It's the same thing that my ski instructors tell me when I have to go ski about Black Diamond. There's no halfway. Go commit.
Full commit. I like it. Just do it.
Full commit. Yep. Just do it.
That's great. You have any current projects that you want to make sure the Imposter Syndrome Network knows about? I know you're still doing some writing, I think, maybe with the women in networking stuff on Cisco's blog, or I don't know, anything that's out there that you want to point folks towards.
Let's see. Oh, my latest article appeared on the Worldwide Technology platform. So it's about a very brand new startup company called Graphient. And if you go to wwt.com and you search for Graphient, you will find my latest article. So I continue to write. I continue to write about technology, and I still continue to enjoy it. So 2 bits about Graphient. It's an offering of network as a service to provide fully curated, secure, fast, and simple WAN services.
Wow, sounds interesting. We'll definitely we'll get that link from you and put it in the show notes because I want to read that article and check them out. If folks want to reach out, can they? Is there a good place for folks to reach out to you if they want to talk to you about any of this or something else, or how can they find you?
As long as the platform's still alive, you can reach me at Micheline Murphy on Twitter.
Fantastic. We'll be back next week. I'm not blaming Linux anymore. I'm
I
blaming
am.
some combination of Chrome and Zencaster, because Brave is working fine and everything else works fine all the time. So for some reason, Chrome just can't. It says that there's no audio or video devices connected to my computer,
That's really weird.
but it's only in Chrome.
I swear to you, it's Linux. It's Linux. It's always Linux.